Alrighty, welcome back to ESPN 1700, broadcasting from the ESET studios. ESET, Internet Security, do more. Alrighty, when we left off, we were talking about millennials and insurance and so forth. Kind of made me remember of all the things we've kind of gone through that people get worried about. And I'm talking about just in my 40-year career. Talked about the '87 market crash, Black Monday, how terrible that was, and so forth. And it was recovered not long afterwards. One that people forgot about that's not so big, because 9/11, I also remember 9/11, the attack on our country and how terrible that was. Just recently, actually, it's almost 10 years ago now, the Great Recession in 2008 started. That was obviously recently. But back in the 80s through the 90s, we had the S&L loan crisis, the savings and loan crisis. And that was just something that was horrendous living through it and actually being the banks. And I actually was in one bank, actually a savings and loan, it was called. And RTC came in, the Resolution Trust Company guys. I remember they drove up in black LTDs, all had black suits, white shirt, black tie, looked like the mob almost. And they come in like, we're closing you guys down. And we all had to leave. But the failure in the country was they had about 3,234 savings and loan associations in the United States from 1986 to 1995. And actually they closed, or 1,443 of them actually failed. About about a third of them failed, where they just couldn't make it. And what happened back then was kind of made sense that they're loaning money, but yet they're paying a higher amount to people that were giving them, and it just didn't work out, obviously. And
what happened was the Federal Reserve charged what's known as the discount rate, which is what they charge banks to borrow from them. And they actually charged its member banks from, get this is pretty mind-blowing considering the rate environment we're in right now, they were charging 9.5% to 12% to the banks. And technically, or most likely, that discount rate is lower than the typical rate you get, because that's how banks make money, is they take money from the Federal Reserve, loan it out, and charge on that spread to make money.
And it's kind of funny, too, and I remember that the General Accounting Office, they estimated the total cost to be about $160 billion, including about $132 billion to taxpayers. But when it's all said and done, the total possible came in book value losses was about $402 billion, about $407 billion, so about more than twice as much as they expected. Not a surprise for the government. They always seem to underestimate on expenses and overestimate on revenues.
Absolutely, and it is a scary process. I remember you said, you had people coming to the bank, what am I going to do with my money? Am I going to get my money back? Or, it's frightening time in our country.
And the point I try to make to people when they come in is that, again, we buy your strong companies, we buy your food companies, we buy your car companies, we buy your insurance companies. They've done extremely well over that time frame. We don't try to get fancy and buy the next, Apple coming out. And we've made it through all these major problems going back, like the S&L crisis, which, again, it was terrible.
Yeah, and it is so important to just look through history and see kind of some different areas that have caused, market panic. It's either caused by situations such as the savings and loan crisis, or the Great Recession was due to the banking collapse, or the fear of the banking collapse. But then also those pullbacks in the market can be due to overvaluations. That's what we saw in the tech boom and bust. And then also the Nifty 50 we saw in, what was that, the 70s?
I think it started late 60s, and then it went into the 70s, and we had the oil embargo in like 73, 74, and then we also had, going really, depending on my memory now, we also had price freezes by President Nixon, who actually froze prices, which caused inflation. And Paul Volcker, we had like these high interest rates. Terrible, but we made it through it. And all these companies, and again, you didn't go in and buy the Nifty 50, these high companies everybody's getting into. You looked at saying, wait a minute, this company's trading at 10, 12 times earnings. That's a good company. It's going to be around. Let me buy that company. Maybe the stock goes down, 10, maybe even 20%. But where's that business 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, let alone 20 years down the road, going through all these major problems we go through? The good companies make it through.
Exactly. So kind of circling back to another topic we talked about today, a lot of insurance companies will use emotion as a ploy to sell both insurance and annuities. But look at everything our country has gone through, and had you invested in good quality companies over that time frame, I'm willing to bet your money would be probably triple, quadruple.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know, maybe 10 times what you would have if you did just a fixed income annuity or whatever it may be. So again, be very questioning, I guess is the right word, when looking at annuities and life insurance products, because equities are truly the best way to grow your wealth over time.
Yeah, and again, the annuities and the life insurance many times, unfortunately, sold on fear. Oh, you're going to lose your money. Don't do that. Invest in this over here. It's guaranteed. No, don't worry about it going down. We've talked about on our other show and in our office, and we've said it here a couple times, stocks. We really don't call them stocks. We call it equity. You own something that you can hold on to. Equity is good, so you own equity. Don't think about a stock. It's going to fluctuate up and down. So
exactly.
One thing I do want to talk about, we've got about 2 minutes left here, was before we forget, this weekend, a big vote in France about the EU.
Absolutely, and they're voting for their president, correct? That's what's going on?
I guess they're voting for the president. I bring this up. I know it's major, but the concern is that they could do what Britain did and pull out. And if they pull out, the concern is that things are going to collapse. Now, I know the market was up today, so I was not worried about it. But the reason why I bring this up is that no matter what happens on Sunday, I guess is their election, which I guess is Monday there, don't worry about it. We had a few people that were panicking during Brexit before it happened. Said, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Some people, I'm sure, pulled out because they're concerned about it. What happened after Brexit?
Went up, and I was so happy because I actually convinced a couple of clients. I was talking to them saying, everything is going to be fine.
You had clients worried about Brexit?
No, not worried. Not worried. I got them to add money to the account.
Okay,
because that's what you're supposed to do when minor things like that cause short-term market panic. You say, why is a great company on sale for no relation to this fear? Yep. So that's what you kind of have to do, is you have to look for those companies that say, this has no correlation to Britain leaving the EU.
Right.
And we've talked about it in the past too. We don't have enough time to talk about it today, but the EU, these individual countries can do just fine if they're on their own. If the EU were to dissolve, it's not going to destroy all these different countries.
Exactly. So, should I have more to say, but that's the music, so our time is up here, 2:59 on a Thursday afternoon. Thank you for joining the Big Biz Show. I'm Brent Wilsey with Chase Wilsey filling in for Sully. We'll be back next week right here on 1700 AM ESPN. Have a great weekend.